Could Otwell Elementary be a charter school? More on the possibilities, plus the possibilities for a pair of stellar projects in Huntingburg have been unveiled, and part 1 of Bill Potter's 2-part Crisis Connection interview tonight on Inform. All of that and much more is up next here on the 18 WJTS News. Hello, I'm Bradford Raths. A new option has been laid out for saving Otwell Elementary, though some are warning the path won't be an easy one. Another large crowd filled the Otwell Community Center last night to hear from District 63 State Representative Mike Braun. Braun, who served for 10 years on the Jasper School Board, laid out the idea of turning Otwell Elementary into a charter school. Braun told those on hand that a charter school may be the most realistic idea for saving Otwell Elementary. Braun also pointed to the ongoing financial issues in the Pike County School Corporation as evidence in favor of a charter school. Braun says the problems are being traced back to a 4-year time frame between 2008 and 2012. Braun stated that current Pike County School Superintendent Suzanne Blake, who was hired in 2012, is dealing with a $4 million debt that grew out of irresponsible spending under the administration of former Superintendent John Thomas. That debt was at $6 million when Blake was first hired. Braun says the issues are similar to ones he dealt with when he was first elected to the Greater Jasper School Board in 2004. He says though they are a relatively new option in Indiana, charter schools give Otwell something to look into.
You do run into legitimate issues of finances being harder to get ends meet. You throw on top of it some mismanagement that might have occurred along the way, and you're in a pickle now to where it's uncertain what's going to happen. And for this particular school to be the first move at trying to address broader financial issues, they now have an option to chart their own course.
Of course, current District 48 State Senator Mark Messmer was in the District 63 seat during the financial upheaval. Messmer says much of the problem was kept out of the public light until Blake was hired, thus he was shocked when he first heard the news.
First time I met with Suzanne Blake about the first month she got here, and she shared with me the magnitude of debt they had accumulated over the prior 5 years, and it was really alarming.
Now, last night's gathering also featured a special guest. Nancy Custer is the president of the newly formed Northern Rush County School Corporation. She spoke about the charter school process that she's gone through since the Rush County School Board voted back in March to shut down Mays Elementary. Custer says things have not always been easy. However, she says the process can be very rewarding if done right.
Get the facts out there, keep your public informed, work together as a team. And you really need to try to work together as a county as a whole, because ultimately, if they start a charter school here, those children are going to progress on in 7th and 8th grade, high school, onto the other Pike County schools. So they're always going to be a part of the team. So they just need to be looked at as part of the team, and the county as a whole try to grow together and learn to work together. It'll all be fine.
Of course, last night's meeting was the second public forum held regarding the future of Otwell Elementary. The first one took place last Thursday evening after the Pike County School Board voted to close Otwell Elementary at its regular board meeting last Monday night. Design concepts are finally off and running for a pair of stellar communities projects in Huntingburg. Last night, officials with Indianapolis-based Taylor, Safker & Williams Design Group held a public meeting at Old Town Hall to unveil design ideas for the 4th Street Heritage Trail and the Market Street Park projects. Now, Ron Taylor with Taylor, Safker & Williams says subcommittee meetings identified a few challenges with the 4th Street project, such as right-of-way space, business needs, and permanent construction versus temporary space. In the end, Taylor says the proposed design is more of a flex street concept. Now, the concept will keep the main part of 4th Street intact, while the Heritage Trail will run down both sides of the street. Taylor also pointed out options for closing off the street for major events, such as the Kiwanis Car Show. Meanwhile, subcommittee meetings for the Market Street Park project also identified several needs. These were functional use for special events as well as everyday usage, being a place people want to return to, and complementing and enhancing the 4th Street corridor. Other features discussed were space for a permanent performance venue, an interactive water feature, and vendor accommodations. Taylor says while there are a lot of components to both projects, these plans are doable.
These are some pretty bold initiatives for a community this size, but I think what's exciting about this is we've found a way to come up with some great ideas, some great designs, and all of these things are really doable for a community this size within the Stellar program.
Taylor also laid out what these projects will accomplish for Huntingburg. He says both projects will bring big change, but also big improvement.
When you look at the 4th Street improvements that we're talking about, this really is going to be an economic driver for not only attracting tourism, but also attracting residents that want to come and be a part of how exciting 4th Street's going to be. The Market Street Park, too, is also going to be one of those projects that really is a game changer for the community. It's going to create a central space that draws people out, not only during events like the Huntingburg Jags Festival, but also for everyday use, for coming out, being part of the park during lunch hours and things like that. It's going to be, both of these projects are going to be game changers, I think.
An open house was held after the presentation for questions and feedback. Construction on both projects is expected to get underway sometime next year. Well, it took a little longer than expected, but a Jasper company is finally on track with its tax abatement for this year. Last night, the Jasper City Council voted to find Stens Corporation in compliance with the terms set out in their tax abatement. Previously, Stens had been found not in compliance since they had only hired 28 employees after promising to fill 98 jobs when the abatement paperwork was first completed. Mayor Terry Seitz says City Attorney Renee Cabrick and Clerk Treasurer Juanita Boehm recently met with Stens to review facts and figures related to the abatement. Seitz says a review of City's scoring on the abatement found that the much lower jobs figure had little impact on Stens' abatement score in the end.
Looking at a scoring to say what if they were at the current jobs, which are somewhere between 28 and a projected 36, it would still score above 100, somewhere around 113. So with that in mind, the council heard that really nothing has impacted that in the number of jobs that offered. They have also met all requirements related to the investment of the real property and the abatement, and both of those passed this evening.
The original abatement score was 116. Now, the council reviewed and approved other abatements last month, but not without concerns about hiring. Representatives of Jasper Chair Company, Cash Wagner and Associates, and Meyer Distributing all expressed their concerns at last month's council meeting over the lack of people to fill the available jobs. Some businesses have expressed concerns with the city's abatement paperwork. Seitz has dismissed those concerns, but has called for change to the state's tax abatement policies to help employers out. A judge is now considering whether to move the trial of a man charged with fatally beating an Indiana University student. The attorney for 49-year-old Daniel Messel of Bloomington argued in Brown County Court yesterday that he can't receive a fair trial there. Defense attorney Dory Marion says news reports of Messel's criminal record tainted potential jurors. Messel has pleaded not guilty to a murder charge in the death of 22-year-old Hannah Wilson of Fishers. Her body was found on April 24th near Brown County's Lake Lemon, about 10 miles northwest of the IU Bloomington campus. A roommate reported Wilson missing that day. Judge Judith Stewart says she'll rule later on whether to move the trial, but stories on Wilson's death were not limited to Brown County. And finally tonight, Purdue Extension experts say Indiana farmers should be prepared for possible crop losses as they assess damage from recent rains and flooding. Corn specialist Bob Nielsen says no one can say for certain immediately after a storm whether a ponded area of a cornfield will survive, but he says many fields are deteriorating because of the rain, particularly in northern Indiana. Nielsen says young corn can likely survive about 4 days in standing water if temperatures are relatively cool. The risk increases the longer that the plant is underwater. Meanwhile, soil fertility specialist Jim Camerato says poor field conditions have also made it difficult for some farmers to fertilize their crops. Soybeans are typically planted later than corn and could be especially vulnerable to flooding since those plants are less developed. All right, coming up after the break, rain chances finally begin to dissipate, and later, part 1 of Bill Potter's interview with Crisis Connection. We're back after this.